1 week has passed since the Conservatives struck a deal with the Democratic Unionist Party to shore up their majority in the House of Commons. But in that week, there are increasing signs that the government still hasn't got a grip. What's going wrong at the moment? It seems like it's open season on Theresa May and the Cabinet, but with the Cabinet leading the charge.
Well, that's absolutely right. I mean, I think you put it exactly correctly. There isn't a sense of grip at the centre. After the general election, Theresa May's personal authority hugely weakened. She's forced to get rid of the two key advisors her in Downing Street, the two people who were also her enforcers and helped hold the Cabinet into line. And she has no authority within
Fiona Hill and Nick Timothy, the Praetorian Guard.
Yeah. She has, and they were brutal enforcers, quite clearly. And she has no authority to hold her Cabinet in line. And that's the fundamental thing that's happening here. They all feel they can have a go about their pet project. Added to that sense that Theresa May is on borrowed time. Now, we don't know how long the borrowed time is. It could be months. It could, in the more optimistic Conservative versions, be a couple of years. But everybody knows that they're playing for a future when she's not in charge. So her authority is seeping away.
Let's just pick up some of those pet causes. I mean, probably from the important standpoint of the economy, it's about public sector pay, isn't it? And suddenly that seems to be looser.
All of the Cabinet ministers with spending portfolios are saying we need more money to pay nurses, to pay teachers, to invest in education, to pay the police. You could be talking about a 1% increase in the pay cap on public sector spending. It's something like $9 billion a year by 2022, according to the IFS.
So where are we going to find the money?
Well, that's the point. What you're seeing is a fight for that money. Now, the Chancellor is very clear that he is not minded to increase the scale of debt. We still have something like an 87% debt to GDP ratio. So the Chancellor's not going to want to do this. So what we're talking about is a fight over how much taxes should be raised, except none of the spending ministers are prepared to talk about that. The other agenda...
It's important just to say, though, that under the previous Conservative government and indeed the coalition government, there was a balance of in order to reduce the budget deficit, about 80% of the total was spending cuts and 20% tax increases.
That's absolutely right. And that, I think, is roughly what Philip Hammond would like to maintain. Now, he's prepared to put taxes up a little bit. There's no doubt about that. And it is quite normal to see the Chancellor fighting spending ministers. But normally the Chancellor has the Prime Minister behind him. And on this occasion, the Prime Minister's weight behind him isn't enough. So that's what we're seeing. And there's one other agenda which is important here, which is as we move into the teeth of the Brexit negotiations which people are increasingly nervous about, the people who pushed the Brexit agenda hardest are particularly concerned about austerity because they can see themselves getting the blame for some of the things that are coming down the track in the economy.
Now, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Of course, you're the head of our digital operation at the FT, editorial director, veteran journalist, but just supposing you're in Downing Street, Robert, I mean, what would you actually do if you were the PM?
Oh, I thought if I was in Downing Street, if I was not the PM, I'd be polishing my CV. I think the PM has to decide that she is in it for a bit longer than just another couple of months and has to start projecting that. The ministers around her have to believe that she's planning to be Prime Minister for at least a couple of years, that she could get through a couple more reshuffles if she wanted to, and that therefore they need to take the threat of annoying her as seriously as they did before the election. If I was her, I would have a reshuffle and I would push a couple of people who are being difficult out, and I would start to bring along the younger talent who might be my potential successor rather than some of the relatively old figures who've been around a long time.
And it's time to name some names. I mean, who do you think the two chief troublemakers are?
Oh, there's such a long list. I think that Boris Johnson is clearly briefing heavily. I think that David Davis is probably briefing heavily. I think some of the spending ministers like Justine Greening are very much on their own department, and therefore it's a bit more forgivable. But, you know, this reminds me very much. I was chief political correspondent during the Major government, and this has that same fin de siècle feeling about it of a government where everybody is thinking about what's next rather than what's now. And you have politicians playing for the bigger game, which is Brexit and the leadership rather than discipline.
So what we need, I think the conclusion is the firm smack of leadership. Robert Shrimsley, thank you so much.